Okay, so I'm Ruthie, owner of Defy the Status Quo, and this is the very first episode of the Defiant Business Podcast, your 10-minute shot of all things small business, maybe even big business, and marketing. So, you don't have a lot of time, and I'm not going to waste it, so let's get right into it. So, we're going to talk today about why my company is called Defy the Status Quo. And I promise that that does relate to your business. So when we work with two types of clients, typically, we work with larger clients who want their content marketing and strategy taken care of for them. And we also work with smaller businesses to work on their business development and their marketing and their, presence online and the sorts of actions that they need to take to build that brand online. So when we talk to larger businesses, the ones that we're writing content for, we typically go through the point of, isn't there too much content online? And I do admit that there is a lot of content online. There is. You just can't get past it. However, I also say that there is a ton of mediocre content, right? There's a ton of mediocre and bad content out there, and that is the exact opposite of what we do. We work in niches and topics where it's really easy to be boring and stuffy because you kind of cop out and say that's what your target customer wants to see from you. They want to see you be professional and oh so serious. But the fact of the matter is that they really don't. They really don't. They want you to bring them that B2C experience. Yes, it's B2B, but they want you to bring them the B2B or the B2C experience rather. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that for our larger clients because I actually do have a planned episode dedicated to that. So the bulk of this episode is actually going to be devoted to how, we work with smaller businesses and how we normally respond to them. But yeah, so defy the status quo. Why? Yes, it is a very big sounding name. And when I picked it, it was because I knew that my company and my brand was going to grow beyond just content marketing because I have passions in a lot of areas. And a lot of those passions kind of relate to business management, business success, business development. And so I knew that it was going to be more one day. I just didn't expect that day to be the very first year that I named my business. So why defy the status quo for a small business? So the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that in their first year, 20% of businesses will fail. And that doesn't sound like a big number until you move on to how many fail in the first 5 years. And that number is 50%. And then in the first 10 years, it's 70%. And so this number is significant to me because most of the small business owners that I call friends, even associates, they're not the sort of person who just wants to have their business for a little while. And they want it to be something they can pass on to their children. They'd love to grow it if possible. And grow means a lot of different things because if you're a freelancer and you want to stay a freelancer, then maybe that's just growing your client base or getting new clients that, pay higher rates, but grow means different things to everyone. But almost everyone I know wants to have their business longer than 10 years. They didn't start it to fail, you know, but why do these businesses typically fail? The top reason was because there wasn't a market need for their offering. 42% of businesses failed because there wasn't a market need for their offering. Now, you can normally get around this by doing a business plan before you invest heavily into your business. But I can tell you that I know a lot of people don't do that, myself included. I did not do a business plan before I started. I started out as a freelancer before I started working on building a team and offering a more comprehensive content marketing solution for my clients. The second reason was that they ran out of money. That's not hard to do when you're running your own business. People are always like, oh, just write it off, just write it off, just write it off. And you're like, well, you got to have the money first, right? To write it off, you got to have the money first. And so if you don't have the money, then there's nothing to write off, is there? You know, if you're like, oh, it's $1,000 to go to that conference, I'll just write it off. Wait, do you have $1,000 to just, throw at this conference? Because you're not really going to see the benefit of that money until you file your taxes the next year. It's not like they give you back that conference money. So you need to have the money, so that you don't run out and then your business fails. And this is something I see a lot with freelancers too. And that is just that they go through feast and famine cycles. And sometimes those famine cycles are just a little too hard. And then you end up, needing to go get a job or do work that you're not really happy with. You're, begging for work basically. And that's just not a really good position to be in. And then 14% failed because of poor marketing, which is something I do see a lot of. And it says poor marketing, but I would also say that there are probably people who don't market. And that's any type of business. What typically happens is you're marketing, you're talking to people, you're going to events, you're posting on social media. You may even have some Facebook ads, depending on what your business is, what your business model is, what your product is, service, and you're posting, you've got a ton of ads up. And then you get client work or you get a lot of customer orders and then you stop marketing, right? So you put your marketing through the feast and famine cycle as well. The problem with that is that you end up with an inconsistent client or customer pipeline, and that causes your business, your revenue, to go through feast and famine. So the key here, I think, is that especially when you consider less traditional type businesses, so the numbers that I talked about here with the businesses failing, 20% in the first year, 50% in the first 5, and 70 in the first 10, and then 42% fail because there isn't a market need for their offering, 29% ran out of money, and 14% they failed because of poor marketing. What about less traditional businesses, though? Do those numbers apply to them? I'm sure that when you count less traditional businesses, like freelance businesses, businesses that never go beyond being an LLC, maybe, or a solo owner. I mean, if they're not filed as LLCs, but like maybe web designers, agencies, writers, developers, the kinds that are almost completely remote, they don't need offices. What about those businesses? When you add those numbers in, how high are those numbers then? And for almost everyone that I speak with, all the small business owners that I speak with, and even some of the medium-sized businesses, the top reason that they're struggling is that they are not consistent with their business development. And part of business development is marketing. Or at least, there's business development, there's sales, and there's marketing. And that's like that trifecta that you have to consistently work on. You have to show up every day, right? You have to show up every day for your sales and your marketing and your business development. If you don't, you risk going through the feast and famine cycles. And one of those times, the famine cycle is going to come at a point where it's too hard and you're going to have to do something that makes you unhappy because you have to pay a mortgage. You have to take care of your kids. You've got to take care of your pets. You've got to take care of your debts. You can't just be like, hey guys, going through a famine cycle right now. I got to pause. No, they want their money, which means you're going to have to go get a job. Or you're going to have to do work that you're not happy with. And life is too short for you to do anything that makes you unhappy. So, we're going to explore this topic a lot because I'm very passionate about it. I know that a lot of businesses struggle because they are not consistent. And so, this morning, one of the things I want you to commit to, I've got less than a minute left to meet my 10-minute deadline. One of the things I want you to commit to is showing up. Do one task for your marketing, do one task for sales, and do one task for your business development. Okay? That's what you're going to walk away with right now. And this is, you're listening to this, you're going to go ahead and do it, right? I told you to do it. I told you the numbers. So it's up to you now. All right. So this was my very first episode of the Defiant Business Podcast. My name is Ruthie, owner of Defy The Status Quo, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places, Defy The Status Quo. Okay? And defythestatusquo.com if you're interested in checking out the site. Thank you for joining me for the first podcast episode. Until tomorrow.